Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Depot Dive. I'm Ross McCorkle, and above me on the screen, Mr. Josh Carney. He was on a couple weeks ago, filling in for Joe because Joe was sick this time. Joe's in a little bit better of a situation. Not sick, he's on vacation. He's enjoying himself down in Phoenix, I believe. Scottsdale, to be precise. He'll be back with us next week. Josh and I are going to dive into a couple of the latest Steelers-related topics. Brendan Sorsby, of course, the topic that we can't avoid. Get used to it. It's probably going to be a topic for the next month or so, much like Aaron Rodgers was for, I guess the last 4 months up until he finally signed a little bit ago. Then we'll dive into some really not news-related stuff, just some topics that I thought would be interesting to talk about. 2026 sleepers, and then Josh just had a debate with Alex Kozora on the nose tackle position, so I wanted to kind of talk through some of what he had to say there. Josh, how are you doing? Welcome back to the show.
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm glad I'm not in 110-degree plus weather in Phoenix. As nice as that sounds, I will take the 75 here in Pittsburgh right now. So we're doing well.
Good. Well, I think I got to give our listeners a brief update because I think I pointed this out on the last episode. I'm currently at war with a family of skunks that are living under my front porch, and I'm losing the war. Nobody's gotten sprayed yet, but they also have not left. So I'll give another update. I'm sure this is going to be a few weeks of me battling them. Hopefully I don't get sprayed or my dog. That's the really big thing we're trying to avoid. Diving into football stuff, though, Brendan Sorsby, a lot has happened since we last talked. He was initially going to go back to college football. He was granted the injunction by a local judge in Lubbock, Texas. But because of pressures from other college football programs and just other pressures in general, I guess they call it a mutual parting of ways between Sorsby and Texas Tech. I would guess it probably wasn't all that mutual. Texas Tech probably told him to get lost because teams were starting to back out of playing Texas Tech, not just in football, but in other sports, and it was starting to get very ugly. So, long story short, Brendan Sorsby has applied for the supplemental draft, which was kind of the way we thought things were going until that injunction was surprisingly handed out. And so we're kind of back to where we were just a week and a half ago, but now it's official. Well, I guess not official, but he has submitted the paperwork. The NFL still has to officially accept that and announce the supplemental draft because really there isn't a supplemental draft every year. And it's a process that a lot of people don't know that much about, myself kind of included. I think we're all relearning about the supplemental draft right now. And so where we stand is Sorsby could be up for grabs in that the Steelers could potentially put a bid on Sorsby. And the way it works is you submit a bid based on the round that you're willing to give up in next year's draft. Remember, 2027 is supposed to be a loaded draft class. And so giving up a first rounder or even a second rounder could be a huge blunder if they aren't sure about the player. And that's kind of the framework of this conversation. Josh, we'll start here before diving into like the reporting and the news part of it. But how do you view the Sorsby opportunity in general? Do you think that there is a world in which the Steelers should take this plunge?
Initially coming out of the 2025 season, and obviously when he didn't declare for the 2026 draft, I had him high on the list for 2027. A very talented quarterback. I thought he had an up and down year at times at Cincinnati. I know you were at the Arizona game. I think that was his worst game of the year. But just a guy with a ton of talent, big arm. He's mobile. I thought going to Texas Tech was going to give him an opportunity to take his game to the next level, even though it was technically still in the same conference, I believe. As more and more information comes out about him, though, and the gambling issues that he's had and how many bets he's placed and how long it's been going on, I think I would avoid it entirely if I were the Steelers. I know it's an opportunity to get a high level quarterback at maybe a discounted price. I don't think he's going to go, and we can talk about this more later. I don't think he's going to go with a first round pick Um, I don't think that they're in a situation right now where they need to take on, as maybe unfair as it might be, it's a character risk.
Mhm.
He's obviously got some issues off the field. Now, when you hear character risk, we're not talking, a history of violence or legitimate legal trouble off the field as some other players have had in the past, run-ins with the law and things like that. But this is a character concern. I would avoid it, unless the price was just so incredible you couldn't pass up. But I just don't think that where the Steelers are at right now, they need to, you know, wager here, excuse the pun, but wager on this guy, in the future and burn a 2027 draft pick. And I wonder if teams around the league are going to have the same thought process because of how valuable that 2027 draft class is at this point, especially at the quarterback position, where you can take more time and see some of these bigger names, see how they progress through the 2026 season and reassess, next year before the draft. But when it comes to the Steelers, I think they need to focus strictly on trying to develop Will Howard and Drew Aller. And they may have done their homework on the past on Sorsby, and now they have an opportunity to maybe take the plunge with him. But personally, I just think with everything that the Rooneys tend to stand for and wanting that strong character and leader, especially at the quarterback position, I don't see them taking, the risk there. And I personally don't think they should.
Yeah, I think we're mostly in agreement there. You mentioned not spending a first round pick, and you don't think that the
Hmm.
league will. I agree there. I think the consensus. Well, there isn't really a strong consensus, but there is kind of a semi consensus of kind of a second, third round range for him. And honestly, that might be where I have his talent level. Anyways, I look forward to reading Alex Kazora's breakdown and scouting report on him because
Hmm.
just a little bit more in depth than what I've been able to do myself so far. But man, just my impression of watching him, and you don't want to lean too much into your evaluation of just one game, but he played that Arizona defense. That's honestly it was one of the better defenses in the league, especially in the secondary. And man, I think like the first pass attempt, he was picked off. I think he only had like 140 yards in that game. It was an
Yep.
ugly game for him. He didn't really do a lot. Every time he had an opportunity to throw, he'd drop his eyes and kind of just start to run. And I think a lot of people are viewing this as, oh, well, the Steelers never have an opportunity to get these first round talents. And, because they're always picking 20, 22 kind of range in the draft. And so this is an opportunity to kind of steal one. But of course, that's ignoring the fact that it's a gamble for a reason. It's not just a steal with no strings attached. First of all,
Right.
and second of all, I mean, I don't even know that I necessarily view him as that kind of talent, to be completely honest with you. There's nothing in his stats, or I mean, he's got the height, and he's the dual threat. He's kind of an intriguing project, if you will, but the Steelers already have a couple of those on the roster. And so, are you really getting somebody who's obviously better than a better prospect than Aller? Or, I mean, right now, if you had to choose, kind of ignoring the character stuff, is he a better prospect than Aller?
Oh, that's a great question. Again, I haven't done a deep dive into Sorsby. I've just watched, a few games here and there. I watched a lot of his snaps last year doing the scouting report for Jeff Caldwell. I think there's better parts of Sorsby's game that I like more than Aller. I like some of the decision making. I like some of the accuracy that he has. He's got the strong arm, but I still, I think, would take Aller's arm strength there. Athleticism probably would lean Sorsby, but yeah, that's tough. And I saw this back and forth with Dane Brugler and Chase Daniel, former NFL quarterback, on X the other day when all this information came out. And Chase Daniel was saying he was a surefire first round pick. And it's like, if that were the case in 2026, he would have come out in that draft class.
Exactly.
So I can't see him being this surefire first round pick. I've seen some of the comps to Baker Mayfield. You can question if Baker Mayfield should have gone number one overall when he did and all that, but I didn't see a quarterback that was like, yeah, that's a first round quarterback. You have to take a chance on him. I saw a guy that had a decent season last year with a lot of solid traits, but he still needed that developmental year in college. And I thought he was going to get that at Texas Tech with a good program. They went out and they added a lot of weapons and spent a lot on NIL to get these guys in. And now he's not going to have that. And then you question, is he even going to be eligible in the 2026 season in the NFL? Is the NFL going to come
Right.
down and punish him for this stuff? So how much development is he going to be able to do, for whatever team takes him in the supplemental draft before he gets thrown on the field? So I think I would still lean Owler at this point over Sorsby. But I'm a little concerned as far as, what could happen here. I just don't see it with him where it's like that's a franchise quarterback, no doubt.
Yeah, anyone who's saying that, I think you can just write off their opinion, to be completely honest, because it's just the draft is already a difficult thing to predict. Number one picks flop all the time, and I don't even think that he's in the question of a number one type of talent. I mean, he could easily have gone back to college and had like a Cade Klubnik type of season. Like, who are the guys we were talking about this time last year who are supposed to
Oh,
be the first rounders and didn't pan out? Like, that's why you can't just say, "Oh, well, he set himself up to maybe be a number one overall type of pick next year if he has a good year." Well, yeah, there's a big huge that actually has to happen for him to become that, and that hasn't happened yet. And so, yeah, I am skeptical of him. Certainly not in the first round. I wouldn't spend probably a day two pick on him either. But the big question is, should if the Steelers could just throw like a fifth round pick out there and just kind of throw a flyer, like, is it
yeah.
worth it at that point? We don't know if this is even going to be reported because it's not like a public ledger comes out of who submitted picks. It's kind of like the waiver wire. It works in three buckets of, I think, 6 wins. The teams who have 6 or fewer wins last year, and then playoff team or teams that missed the playoffs in the second tier, and then teams that made the playoffs. So Steelers already have the lowest priority. The tiebreaker, if you will, would not go to the Steelers. But there's a chance this kind of thing gets reported, and like these teams put in a bid just because of how much buzz there is around this topic. I'm sure all the insiders will be doing a lot of digging. So is it worth the potential PR issue on him to just throw a late round pick? And if you get him, even more so, is it worth the potential PR issue?
Yeah, kind of like what I was saying earlier. Like if you get to that point where it's like, hey, okay, we feel comfortable with a fifth or a sixth, like I could be talked into it. But then the question becomes, let's say they get him with that fifth or sixth.
Right.
Then what do you do with him?
Right.
Then you would have 5 quarterbacks. Is he put on the exempt list all season with the punt? Like what happens from there? So there's a lot of roster building that you have to look at as well. It can't just be we'll throw a fifth here and if we get him great then we'll figure it out from there. Like there's a lot of unknown variables, and then if you do get him and he's eligible to play at a certain point in 2026, how are you developing him as a coaching staff? Are you taking resources away from Aller and Will Howard and saying, okay, Sorsby's our guy? Like after you've already put all this time in with Aller and Howard in the offseason, there's a lot of questions. And I just don't think with the character issue and the topic that we're dealing with the gambling and the integrity of the game, I just don't think it's worth the headache for the Steelers. And I would rather they go through the 2026 season, develop Aller and Howard, reassess the 2027 quarterback situation in the draft class when it comes time, and take your shot on one of the guys that was on the field in college this year rather than trying to go this supplemental draft route.
Yeah, I think we pretty much agree there. I Part of me is like, well, you might like just throw maybe not even a fifth, like a sixth or a seventh round pick out
Right.
there if you get him. The only way I would do that if I was a Steelers is if I had talked to the league and was pretty sure he was going to be suspended and put on the exempt list. Because then, yeah, you're not really having to deal with the roster math part of it as much.
Mm-hmm.
You can kind of just stash him and he can be a project for next year or whatever it might be. And the risk is very minimal, obviously, at that point with a seventh round
Yeah.
pick involved. I mean, I don't think the Steelers would get him for that. It seems like the league is, you hear buzz about a second or a third round pick. I think, who was it? McShay was saying more like a fifth or something like that. And so probably you don't get him for a seventh, but the other part of that is if he does make it to the seventh and the Steelers get him, well, that means that the homework came back pretty negative on him, and all the other teams that were doing their homework probably didn't like what they saw, and so that's probably not a great
Exactly.
sign. So I've kind of been bouncing back and forth. Is like, is it worth even a late round pick? Like, I understand the logic of might as well throw one out there, because how often are you even going to get a player of that talent or potential in the seventh round? I get that. But there's a lot of other factors here. And like you said, there could be suspensions. There could be, I think everyone needs to accept we don't actually know the full extent of the gambling stuff. If he
No.
truly was an addict, who knows what the heck he was doing? I mean, he could have been like, there's right now there hasn't been any buzz about legal stuff because the bets he made on his own team was while he wasn't playing, and so he couldn't really fix scores and stuff. But there's a lot of other ways that the gambling stuff can become a legal issue. Was he underage when he was gambling? That matters in certain states. Was he sharing information with other people, like, hey, this guy's injured, so you should bet the under on the passing, like that kind of stuff. Fraud can become an issue. Or if he's using other people's accounts to circumvent, it looking like he's betting, that's another fraud issue that can, potentially have legal ramifications. I don't think there was any kind of point fixing stuff, but I don't think we can rule it out. I mean, he was a starter while he supposedly was addicted. Like, he just went to recovery, and if he truly is an addict, that means he was gambling a lot up until, very
Yeah.
recently. And
Yeah.
so I don't think we know. This could just be the tip of the iceberg, the stuff that we're aware of right now. And so teams are going to do their homework, and apparently the Steelers are, according to the Athletic's Mike DeFabo, they are doing their homework. And he said it sounds like the gambling thing wouldn't be an automatic disqualifier, and his evidence for that is the fact that last year the Steelers did kind of automatically disqualify, what's that guy's name, Hunter Deckers,
Yeah. Yeah.
the quarterback who had a similar kind of betting scandal, but he was a sixth, seventh round type of talent. And so there's obviously a big difference in risk reward profile for someone that could potentially be viewed as a first rounder and someone who's a sixth, seventh. Yeah, at that point probably isn't worth even entertaining that idea. In this case, the Steelers have to do their homework. It's the responsible thing to do. As other Steelers reporters have pointed out, that doesn't necessarily mean they're interested. Mark Cabali, I think, said they've been doing their homework on him for over a year, and I'm sure the homework has increased since finding out about all this, as it has with everybody else. I think there's
Yeah.
already been reports that, like, since the announcement of the supplemental draft, like 20 something teams have reached out to his agent, and so there's a lot of information gathering going on behind the scenes. Doesn't necessarily mean the Steelers are interested, but they are doing their homework, and so that does mean something. So I think we're both kind of on the same page. Probably shouldn't submit a bid. In a world where they do, I mean, I don't know if we even want to go there, because we've kind of already talked through. It's kind of an all or nothing. You either believe in him and submit a bid and think that everything's going to be okay, or, you don't, because that late round stuff kind of comes with some strings attached.
Yeah, it does. And, I have to say, I was a little disappointed when DeFabo did say that, last year, Hunter Deckers, I think he was at Iowa State and he ended up going to a Division II school, or maybe it was Northern Iowa. I can't remember where he ended up going after the Iowa State stuff, but basically saying that he was crossed off the board, like they wouldn't even consider it. But with Sorsby, like just looking back at Hunter Decker's gambling ban, you know, this ESPN article said he made 366 bets on his mother's DraftKings account, and it totaled just under $3,000. Storesby was like close to 1,000 bets and almost 10 grand. Like
I
there
thought I
has
thought I
to
saw
be,
90 grand or something.
oh, maybe. Okay. So there has to be a line where it's like, okay, if Decker's issues were too much, that you were taking him off the board. I know it's a talent discrepancy. Sorsby is a lot better, like you mentioned, but like there has to be a moral line, right? Where we're like, okay, this is excessive. We don't need to touch this. Like we don't need to drop our standards in a sense. So it was disappointing to hear that, but again, it could just be, hey, we're doing our background on him. You know, we did like him at Cincinnati last year before we knew all of this, and maybe in the end he's off the board. But that was a little concerning to hear.
Well, Omar Khan's track record has been squeaky clean in the guys he's gone after in the draft, and I'm trying to think, even kind of free agency too. They haven't really brought in anybody
Yeah, there
that's
hasn't been
had
any
any
character
kind of
issues.
concern. So it would be surprising to say the least. But we'll close the book on that. I'm sure we will, unfortunately, do a lot more talking about this topic.
Yes.
So we're going to move into some more fun stuff here and just kind of our opinions about the 2026 Steelers. I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through some sleepers that we see on the roster, 2 or 3 each for us. Josh, why don't you go ahead and start?
Yeah, so the number one guy I have, and anybody that's followed me on Steelers Deep for the last few years, I am a huge personal fan of Carson Bruner. I really liked him coming out last year out of Washington. Obviously, I got to spend a lot of time with him at the Shrine Bowl. He was a guy that I identified early on as a fit, not just for the family connections, but the style of play. And then we watched last year during the 2025 season how much the inside linebacker room struggled, particularly stopping the run and in coverage. So there wasn't a ton that they were doing well. And then the Steelers didn't add to that room. Obviously Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson will be back as the, kind of the 1-2 punch inside under new coordinator Patrick Graham, and then Cole Holcomb and Malik Harrison are the top backups. But I think Carson Bruner, obviously he was a standout on special teams last year. Garnered a lot of recognition at the end of the season from Pro Football Writers of America. I believe he even got some All-Pro votes from the AP as a special teamer. But I think this year he could take a step forward as a defender. If those inside linebackers continue to struggle against the run, Bruner had some good tape in college as a run defender. He's kind of that downhill thumper. I think he's a similar player as a Malik Harrison, a Cole Holcomb. But Bruner was pretty good in coverage in college as well. Has some good ball skills, and I think if that room continues to struggle, that we're going to see Carson Bruner get some snaps defensively. I know he only had 2 defensive snaps last year. Obviously, that was due to injury replacement. But you earn more opportunities with what you do on special teams, and Bruner was a standout in that department last year, and I think that opened some eyes within the front office, and I think with a fresh perspective from this new coaching staff, he has a chance to come in and build off of that and potentially earn some snaps defensively, and I think could open some eyes there. So I think Carson Bruner is a legitimate sleeper this year.
I like it, and I think I'm actually writing about that topic over the weekend, so
There you go.
everybody stay tuned for that. I think we chatted about that a couple of days or a couple of weeks ago when we were on this last, talking about Carson Bruner and his. I think it was a listener question actually that prompted the
Yes.
conversation. So I think we agree there. I'll start with Asante Samuel Jr., and I think the big difficulty for him is figuring out where he fits in the secondary, just because there's so many bodies in the secondary right now and a lot of talent. Probably the most talented secondary that the Steelers have had, gosh,
Yeah, it's been a
in a
while.
long time, really. Like
Yeah.
maybe sometime in the late 2000s, kind of, those teams maybe. I'm trying to think. Like there was the years where they had like late Ike Taylor and like William Gay, and maybe that team could give them a run for the money. But even I
Hmm.
think the potential is even higher with this group, just because you have Joey Porter Jr. I think Jamel Dean is going to be a solid piece. Asante Samuel Jr. If Dalen Everett really kind of emerges, as it seems like he has a possibility to, based on the buzz at OTAs and minicamp, I guess we'll see where that goes. But certainly some good upside there in a 3rd-round pick. And then, you can't talk about that group without talking about Jalen Ramsey either, and Brandon Eccles. We haven't even discussed him. And
Yeah.
he was a
Yeah.
solid piece last year, and he's like the 6th guy now. He's like might not play very much kind of guy. So I don't know. Asante Samuel Jr., I think if he gets the opportunity, and I think that there is a path for him to get the opportunity, just because I think it was Omar Khan who spoke about cornerback being one of the most injured positions in the league. And so it's good to have the shelves well stocked. And so if Joey Porter Jr. or Jamel Dean, God forbid, one of them goes down for a few weeks or even longer, you're going to see a lot of Asante Samuel Jr. And I think he's primed for a good season. If you look back to his first 3 years with the Chargers, he had double-digit passes defensed and a pair of interceptions in each of those seasons. He was, getting better each year. I think his tackling issues was kind of the main thing, but I think he showed some improvement in those areas last year with Pittsburgh, and of course that was coming off neck surgery. I think he said last year that he's felt the best that he ever has in the NFL since dealing with that neck issue and getting the fusion surgery. And so this is a guy who has a lot of talent. He's only 6 years old. I think he'll be 27 by the time the season starts or shortly thereafter. He's still young. He has a lot of talent, and I think he's kind of the slept-on guy in this secondary who really could have a big impact. And really the kind of guy you'd love to have around just because of the depth aspect of it all. Any thoughts on Asante there?
Yeah, I really like the guy. I was glad to see that he was resigned. Obviously, it felt like he was a priority, a guy that they wanted to bring back no matter what. I did a terrible take on this a couple of weeks ago where it felt weird that there were, beat writers pushing that he might be the odd man out in the secondary. He could get cut because of Dalen Everett's emergence. And it never made any sense to me. I think Samuel's a guy that, regardless of who the first corner off the bench is at a certain point in the season, whether it's Everett or Samuel, you want that depth, especially at that position. And Samuel, I think, started to find his legs again late in the year. Obviously, he'll have to learn a new scheme in a sense here, but he has a full offseason with the Steelers. He got some playing time under his belt again after the neck surgery. And I think he's going to remind people when he does get the opportunity of how talented he was. I really like the guy. I think that, I like him more outside than potentially in the slot, depending on what the Steelers do. But he's a nice security blanket in a sense at that position because we don't know what Jamel Dean is. Expectations are high. He's coming off of a great year. He's the prototypical corner that the Steelers are looking for. But this team's also been burned in the past by outside free agent signings and an outside trade, Dante Jackson and obviously last year Darius Slay. Like things didn't work as expected. So there's some, PTSD in a sense there for me
Mm-hmm.
with the outside corner signing, but having Samuel as that security blanket, I feel really good about it, and I think that he could really push for snaps there in a Patrick Graham defense.
Agreed. You have Ben Skoranek written down.
Yes. Yes, I do. All right. So I tried to connect some dots here and I tried to get a little creative, but I want to go back to like 2018 Green Bay. There was a receiver there that was a little known guy, special teams piece, had a tremendous relationship with Aaron Rodgers, uh, you know, earned the respect of Mike McCarthy, and that was Jake Kummerow. I don't know if you remember that name, but
Sure. Yeah.
there was a few weeks there where he was a fantasy football star and was consistently making big plays for the Packers. Well, Ben Skoranek kind of reminds me of that. I think obviously he's going to be in an offense better suited for the receiver position, as McCarthy likes to run, 3 and 4 receiver sets at times. Skoranek obviously has that relationship with Rodgers. He caught, his first touchdown last year as a Steeler. But when Skoranek was on the field offensively, it was primarily in a blocking role. He wasn't given an opportunity to make plays as that receiver. But I think people tend to forget now that he's this special teams ace, that he was a pretty darn good receiver, not darn good, but usable. In 2022 with the Rams, he had almost 40 catches. I think he was just under 400 yards, and made some plays in the run to the Super Bowl. So I'm not saying he's going to be some bona fide number 3 receiver for the Steelers, but I think he's a guy that if you put on the field as that number 4 receiver, that he's going to make some plays and he's going to remind people that, hey, in the past he could do things as a receiver. And yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers, especially in a McCarthy offense, likes to find those underutilized guys. And Skoronek's just a name that's kind of screaming to me like, hey, Jake Kummerow 2.0. So that's how I came up with him.
Yeah, he had 39 receptions, 61
There we
targets
go.
in 2022 there, and 376 yards, 16 first downs. I mean, he was a chain mover for the Rams that year, and I think, yeah, like I do like that pick. I think it's a outside the box thinking, and I think it makes for an interesting conversation. I do wonder how you get him on the field is the
Yeah.
biggest thing. Just because his niche is the blocking, as you said, and I think that getting him receiving opportunities is based on getting him on the field for the blocking. You don't want it to be a thing where every time he's on the field, it's a certain kind of play. And I think this year the Steelers are a little better situated with kind of their top receivers to be blocking threats. You got Pittman now in the mix, and I think even Jeremy Bernard, is a decent blocker in that role. And so you might not have to swap in the Ben Skoranek as much for the blocking, and you might be able to keep those top guys in there. But I do like the pick, and I think, I do like the chemistry aspect of it. Every time you see Aaron Rodgers in the photos that the team posts, Ben
Yep.
Skoranek's attached at the hip. I was joking that he's going to get a little jealous because, oh man, his name's escaping me. Tight end,
Tanyan, Robert Tanyan.
yeah, Tanya. And at Kennywood, they posted those photos, and he saw Aaron Rodgers and Tanya in the roller coaster together, and I was like, uh-oh, Ben Skoronek's going to
Yeah.
get jealous. And sure enough, a couple pictures later, it's the three of them standing in front of one of the like arcade game type of things. So I thought that was kind of
Yes.
funny. But I like the chemistry aspect of it. I also wrote down Darnell Washington. I don't want to spend too much time here. He's not really a true sleeper. Everybody knows about Darnell Washington, but I don't think he's going to have a kind of like a breakout season in terms of his blocking. I think he's already kind of at the top of the league in that aspect for tight end position. But I do think that there's more to be had as a receiver, especially after learning this week that the Steelers are trying to get him to drop weight. He was at 311 last year. If they could get him down to sub 300 and get some of that athleticism back. I mean, he ran like a 4.64 or something, and what somewhere in that neighborhood
I think
in the
I think it was
combine.
4.64. Yeah, I think it
And
was 4.64 on the dot.
I doubt that he's still in that. I mean, he's not still at that level
Yeah.
because that was when he was 263 or 4 pounds, and he's obviously put on like 50 something pounds since then. But if they get him to shed a little bit of weight and he gets a little bit of that speed back, I think again this is a guy who showed good chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers clearly started to trust him. He kind of became a security blanket for Rodgers. And some of those games where nothing else was working, they just give it to Darnell Washington kind of near the line of scrimmage and let him run over a few people for a first down. I think he also had 16 first downs this past year. And so you look for a guy who can consistently move the chains and maybe even offer a little bit more. I think things were trending in that direction before Darnell Washington got injured. And so I think we could see a little bit of a sleeper situation for him in terms of his receiving. And of course, with no Jonnu Smith in the way now, there's more snaps to go around. So I think he could have a little bit of a breakout.
I think he can too. And I do think there's a world where Mike McCarthy utilizes 12 personnel more and really leans into the two tight end sets. Obviously coming in, there was a lot of talk of 11 personnel, 3 and 4 receiver sets, but he's got a tight end room that's highly compensated, and they're quite good at what they are asked to do. And I think Darnell, we're going to see him take a step forward, as that receiver, maybe kind of going back to like a Bubba Franks version or a Jermichael Finley version, guys that McCarthy has had in the past. So at least I'm hoping he's utilized more as a receiver because he's a talented guy. He's a matchup nightmare, and I just don't think that they were creative enough last year under Arthur Smith, and we shouldn't have that problem with Mike McCarthy this year.
I agree. We're going to skip. I was going to have us go through our 2020, or sorry, our rookie second year player kind of breakout players. You had YA Black down, and that segues us into this next section. So we'll just move into the YA Black Keeanu Benton nose tackle debate. I want to set the stage here a little bit because every time I bring up the nose tackle position or I write about it in an article, people like to comment, oh, who cares? Nose tackle's dead, especially at draft time where I'm talking about, hey, they should maybe consider drafting like a Tim Keenan or one of these guys who's kind of a true space eater. A lot of people are like, there's no point because they never use a nose tackle, et cetera, et cetera. And I beg to differ because, especially with this new coaching staff, if you listen during their media availability during minicamp or whatever that was, like 3 of them brought up the nose tackle position, and one of the people who brought up the nose tackle position was a secondary coach. So they're clearly talking a lot about the nose tackle position behind the door, in the meeting rooms and stuff, and just in terms of how they want to structure their defense, it seems like we're going to see a little bit more of the base 3-4. Obviously, sub package still plays a role and all that, but I think that the nose tackle is going to be slightly more prominent than it was last year, and so that begs the question, who's going to fill that position? I think by the end of the season, you did have a pretty healthy mix of Yahya Black and Keeanu Benton in that role. Is that going to stay the same, or who should be kind of the lead guy in that race? Josh, you wrote about Yahya Black in a debate with Alex. Tell me about your stance there.
Yeah, first of all, I do think it's crazy that, every time we talk about the nose tackle position, Steeler fans are like, it doesn't matter. The days of Casey Hampton are gone. But then those same fans will be the ones during the season, especially last year, where they couldn't stop the run. And it was, Keeanu Benton's not good enough at nose tackle. We're getting pushed around at nose tackle. It's like, well, it's either important or it's not. And
Right.
30% of snaps isn't anything to just gloss over. I think for this defense to be as good as they want to be stopping the run, it has to be Yahya Black. He has the prototypical size. He's as strong as an ox. He had some good reps last year down the stretch where he was that two gapper at nose tackle where he wasn't giving up ground. He was able to keep the offensive lineman at bay, and then he was able to get off and make a play. I think he still needs to clean his technique up a bit more. He needs to tap into that strength in certain situations. He might be just an early down guy. He doesn't offer a ton as a pass rusher right now, and that's okay. I thought it was very telling, though, that new defensive line coach Damata Pecco just was like, he could be a great nose tackle. And that had alarm bells going off for me, where it was like, okay, that might be a look behind the curtain as to how the Steelers, this new staff, views Black compared to Benton. And that's not a knock on Benton. I mean, how often were we talking about under Carl Dunbar, Keeanu Benton is playing out of position? It felt like every summer that was the discussion. And then when Benton would struggle during the season, it would come back to he's playing out of position. That's not his strong suit, is to be that two gapper against the run. He's got to be the penetrator, make plays, use his athleticism. We saw that again last year. I can specifically remember former Steeler nose tackle Chris Hoke was on the fan, and every week it felt like early in the season he was ripping Keeanu Benton for not playing well enough. James Harrison was doing the same thing. So I think for this defense to be where they want to be as a run defense in 2026, it has to be Yahya Black. And that doesn't necessarily mean snap one to open the season against Atlanta. But I think at some point they have to make that difficult decision and say, okay, we really like Keeanu Benton as a pass rusher. He can be that sub package guy. He can take some snaps away from Cameron Hayward, and we can still get some pass rush juice there. But when they're in base defense, he can't be the nose. He got pushed around too much. I don't think he's comfortable being that guy that anchors and tries to read the two gaps rather than firing off the football and trying to penetrate. Whereas that felt like Black's game last year.
Yeah, it's half of it's, I feel like, a mindset. Like talking to some of the guys at the Senior Bowl and the Combine, the guys who really want to be like a plugger, they'll talk about like, hey, I don't care about getting the stats, man. I'm just here to free up the guys behind me. And like Keeanu Benton seems like a guy who wants to make the plays, and there's something to be said about that. There's a role for that kind of guy on the team, but it's not as a two-gap kind of true nose tackle. And, you look at some of the best Steelers defenses over the years. Of course, there were the Hampton years. Before that, Joel Steed, and then in the 90s for a long time. They've kind of just always had a good nose tackle, and that's been I wish I had the exact quote. I was looking for it when I wrote the piece about nose tackle. I couldn't find the exact quote, but somebody, I think it might have been James Harrison or somebody, was saying, man, without Casey Hampton, we wouldn't have had those number one defenses in the NFL. We wouldn't have been anywhere close. It just helps so much. You're eating up two blockers. You're freeing up the linebackers to make plays. It helps everybody around them. It just shuts down an entire area of the field for the offense to work out of. And so I agree. It needs to be a priority figuring that position out. I kind of advocated for them to draft like a Tim Keenan. That was kind of before I realized they were viewing Black as more of a nose tackle. I like the idea of doing that. The only issue, and I think Alex pointed this out in the debate, is, well, Black's pretty tall, and your typical nose
Yeah.
tackle has some natural leverage. Black has the weight, but he is very tall, and so he's going to have issues at times with getting out leveraged. And yeah, I mean, maybe that is the case. He might not be the perfect nose tackle, but yeah, I think even undersold it. You said that Pecco said he could be a very good nose tackle. I think he said he could be one of the best. It was the
Yeah.
exact
Yeah. I
quote.
knew
And
it was one
so,
of those. Yeah.
yeah, I thought that opened my eyes as well. And so I think I'm on your side in the debate of why a Black should be the primary nose tackle. But what does that leave for Benton? And, does that mean you shouldn't extend him? And if you don't extend him, does that make defensive line back atop the priority list? And I mean, there's a big question mark there with Benton. Where exactly do you get him snaps? Are you going to take him
Yeah.
from Harmon? Probably not. You going to take him from Hayward? Probably not. I mean, he's getting older, so I guess you can make the argument. But I mean, no one's betting against Hayward until he proves that you should.
Yeah, and this is where I'm torn because I do like Keanu Benton. I think he provides something, in the pass rush, and there were flashes of good run defense last year when he wasn't that true nose. I don't want to extend him if it's that 16, 17, 18 million dollar a year window. I don't think he's that type of talent yet. Could he get there eventually? Potentially, if they put him at his natural position, which is not nose tackle. But then, as you mentioned, are you taking snaps from Derek Harmon in year two? Probably not. You would like to keep him fresh, so there's a way to rotate in. Are you doing the same with Cam Hayward? Probably, especially early in the season. You want that guy to be healthy and as fresh as possible for November, December, January football. The other point what not many are talking about is Sebastian Joseph Day
Right,
and how do
right.
you get him onto the field as well? So the Steelers have a lot of good depth there, but do you need to go out of your way to extend Keanu Benton if you don't view him as that true nose tackle in base defense? And especially at the price tag he's projected, I don't think so. So for me, this year would be about seeing what he can offer as that base defensive end. I think we know what he offers as that interior pass rusher when they're in sub package, but I'd like to see how he looks as a base defensive end in extended snaps if there's a way to get there. But I don't think I would rush to do an extension right now. I would wait to see how it plays out, and then we can reassess at the end of the year. Again, Cameron Hayward would be another year older. You don't want to bet against him. Right now, he's kicking Father Time's butt. But at some point, there has to be a life after Hayward. And could that be Benton and Harmon? Possibly, but if Benton doesn't work out as that base defensive end, then yeah, defensive line would go right to the top of the list once again because it might not be flashy. Quarterbacks can obviously be a major need, but this team has put a major emphasis on building through the trenches on both sides of the football. And if you don't extend Benton and let him walk, then yeah, you're going to need to find a similar level talent to bring in and develop for the future. So they are in a very, very tough situation. It's not enviable at all. It's enviable having the amount of talent that they do along the defensive line right now. But as far as the future goes at that position, there are some tough decisions that they have to make, and it's unfortunate that they're in this spot because Benton has had struggles as that base nose, and they spent a first round pick on Harmon, and Hayward is still an all pro. So it's a tough spot to be in. And I think right now I would let it play out and hope that it solves itself. Whether that's Benton looks fantastic as a base defensive end, or he holds off Black at nose tackle and takes a significant step forward under Pecco. But like I said, I wouldn't rush into an extension right now with him.
Yeah, I kind of think that just the fact that the Steelers were so quick on some of the other deals, they're already two of the four from 2023, and if you include Boswell, they already got three of the five deals done. We kind of already knew that Porter was probably going to take a while just because, well, he has kind of an incentive to wait with Gonzalez and
Mm-hmm.
Witherspoon due for deals. Porter's market could get a little bit stronger. He could do the whole T.J. Watt wait until Garrett and
Good.
Crosby are extended thing, and so Benton doesn't really have that situation because he's not anywhere near the top of the market. I mean, maybe there's a deal that could slightly push the defensive line market up, but I mean, not as directly as what Porter's experiencing. And so the fact that Pittsburgh rushed to get those other deals done and haven't with Benton, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but I'm kind of leaning that way right now. And I agree with some of your points there. We're going to go into our listener question. If you want to have a question answered on a future episode, 412-254-3145. Leave a voicemail or a text. Just tell us your name, where you're from, brief question, and we will answer that on a future episode. This one, I believe, is from a first-time caller. This is Joe in Hawaii.
Hey, guys. This is Joe calling from Hawaii. How are you doing? Whoops. Almost got hit by some waves. Hey, so I've listened to Alex and Dave talk about, who needs to come up more, the offense or the defense in net yards per passing attempt. And I think that the way Dave's trying to frame the question, I don't think Alex is getting it quite right. I think what Dave is saying is, look, Aaron Rodgers only has so much room for improvement. I think the defense has more room for improvement. So not that the defense, that the offense shouldn't improve, but it has less of a ceiling, a lower ceiling, I think, is what he's trying to say. And that, therefore, the defense has to kind of save the day. I just would like to hear your thoughts on where realistically, I know we had historically poor defense last year, but where realistically the expectation should be, either in terms of stats like net yards per pass attempt or other meaningful stats that would, win the day, or a game or two, make the difference for the Steelers this coming year. Because it always comes down to one or two games. And I think, anyway, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how the defense could rise to the occasion. Thanks for your time.
All right, Joe from Hawaii, taking a call from seemingly in the ocean because a wave almost hit him while on the call. That is a first for the show. Just wanted to acknowledge that. But, okay. First, just wanted to address your point about the offense because, yes, I think that there probably is more possibility of the defense picking up more slack based on what happened last year. I think, yes, the majority of the difference can come through the defense in that they're the highest paid defense. They better live up to that this year. But I don't want to undersell either the idea that the offense can really improve. Like, it almost feels dirty to say, like, oh, the offense can be good. Every time I say it, I get a lot of flack, and it just seems like people are married to the idea of this offense being bad, and I get why. It's been bad for a while. But, man, you got Mike McCarthy, who's had a top 10 offense, like, 66% of the time that he's coached in this league for 18 years. I mean, this is a guy who knows how to call a top offense, and you got continuity under Aaron Rodgers. You got more weapons at receiver. You have Rico Dowdle, who I think probably upgrades the running back room. You have the offensive line, who's another year older. There's a lot of reasons why you can say this offense is going to be good. And I think I argued, if you want to hear a more in-depth argument, me and Alex talked about it on the Terrible podcast on Wednesday. And I mean, I don't think it's completely out of the question that the Steelers can, flirt with having like a top 10 offense in one category or the other, whether that's points or yards. I don't think that that's like crazy talk. I think it's maybe a little stretch, but I don't think it's crazy talk. Now, your question was more about the defense and what stats can particularly be pointed to as something that could really improve this year and really make the difference between maybe getting that extra win or two based off of, or compared to last year. Josh, do you have any specific defensive stats that you really are hoping will improve?
Yeah, no advanced analytics, but like I want to see the sacks go up more. I know that might be a stretch. 48 last year was a decent number, but when this 3-4 defense has been at its best, they've been an attacking defense that gets after the quarterback. And I think that kind of goes in hand with the offense being a bit better and hopefully scoring more points, having the ball longer. You shorten games, you're up, it forces teams to throw, it plays into your hands with the three-headed monster pass rushers. I'd like to see sacks go up. I'd also like to see third down efficiency improve as well. It just felt like so often last season it would be third and long. And it's like, okay, here's the opportunity to get off the field. It's third and 11, third and 12, and they're giving up first downs. I'd like to see that third down efficiency improve. And I think obviously if that does, you get off the field, you get the ball back to the offense, you get a chance to catch a breather on the sideline, and then you can get back to attacking. So I definitely want to see sacks increase. I want to see third down efficiency improve. And I think where they must improve, there's no debate about it. There's no excuses at this point, is run defense. I don't recall how many yards they gave up per game. Let me see if I can pull it up here on the ground. But it just felt like last year they were just destroyed. It's 113.1 yards per game on the ground they gave up last year. That is not Steelers football. I have visions of James Cook running the same play over and over and over again against the Steelers defense. Then you juxtapose that with how they dominated the Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Like there's a middle ground there, and they need to find that consistency and get back to stuffing the run. I'm not asking them to be number one in the NFL. I think last year that was either Jacksonville or Denver, I think. Stopping the run. Maybe it was Seattle. I know they had a great run defense as well, but get back to that under 100 yards per game, be around top 10 against the run. And if you can stop the run, you're also going to force teams to throw the ball more, and that allows your pass rushers to pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. So it all works together. And those are the three areas I want to see the defense improve on.
Yeah, the main one I wanted to talk about was third down stuff. We made the joke last year, man, I'd rather them be at 3rd and 2 than 3rd and 10 or 3rd and 12 or whatever, because every time it was 3rd and 12, the other team would convert somehow. It was like uncanny how often that happened. And so they have to improve in 3rd and long. They have all the tools to. I don't know, really, I don't know if I could put a finger on exactly why it happened last year. Probably some communication issues in the secondary, and the pass rush was kind of neutralized at times with teams chipping Watt, and maybe they were married to keeping guys in the same spot too much. I don't know. Whatever it is, they need to figure that out and improve that, because, yeah, I mean, if even half of those 3rd and 12 opportunities or whatever turned into, all right, the other team's punting, that would have made a just enormous difference for the team last year. And so we need to see that improve, absolutely. The other thing I would really like to see is kind of inside linebacker blitz and sack production. I think, back in the day, we saw, especially under like Butler as the defensive coordinator, we saw a lot of that. Like Vince Williams had a season where he had like 8 sacks or something crazy just from rushing up the middle. And I think they have the personnel to do that. Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, all these guys were pretty adept at sacks. Queen in the NFL with the Ravens was pretty good at it, and Peyton Wilson, one of the best in college football when he was at NC State. And so they have guys who can do it. They can get creative with it. I think they have the defensive coordinator to do that. And if you're starting to overload the A gap with some creative blitz stuff, and that's just going to flush them out to guys like Watt and Herbig and Highsmith more, and really create havoc for opposing offenses. So those are the things I would like to see. Joe, thank you for the question. I hope you're safe there in the oceans of Hawaii. If you want to have a question answered on a future episode, 412-254-3145. That's it for today's show. Thank you to Josh for joining me. You can follow him on Twitter at by Josh Carney. You can follow me at Ross_McCorkle. I'm Ross. That's Josh, and we will catch you guys next time.